evening, everyone, and welcome to the Center for the Performing Arts. I'm Julia, and I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement. Now, tonight we're here for a very special program, our Car Front Seat program, sponsored by Car Global. In a typical world, pre-COVID, how we would do these is we would ask the tour manager a month or so before the performance at the center. We'd ask permission for a group of students who were studying that genre to sit in on the sound check, and then they would get to ask questions of the musicians and the artists, and then we'd provide dinner and tickets to the show. However, once COVID hit and we had to cancel the performances, we took everything online, which allowed us to bring in presenters really from all over the world. Now, before we present or start the program, I want to show you a slide of the center. See if Tim has that, and we'll pull that up. So you might not have been to the center before, but here's what it looks like. We have 3 venues on our campus. The Politi, which is our concert hall. It seats about 1,600. And then across the green space, we have the Tarkington, which is a 500-seat proscenium arch theater. And then we also have the Studio Theater, which is a black box theater. It's a wonderful place. And we're just north of Indianapolis in the beautiful city of Carmel. Now, tonight we have a very special presenter with us, and we have students that are going to be joining us and asking questions of that presenter. But we're hoping you guys have questions too. So if you're joining us on Zoom, if you put your cursor over the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A function. Type your question in there, and you can type it in anytime. You don't have to wait till the end. Type it in whenever you think of it. And if you're joining us on Facebook, please feel free to put your comments in the comments section or your questions, and we'll get to those at the end as well. So now I would like to tell you a little bit about our special presenter. Maggie Politi Stiggers is a professional actor, voiceover artist, author, award-winning comedy writer, and producer in New York City. As an actor, she's been seen in Rachel Dratch's Late Night Snack on True TV, Brainchild on Netflix, and Theater School Dropouts on Amazon Prime Video. Now, I've watched that show too, and I happen to know that she not only stars in it, but she writes it and produces it as well. So tonight, if you have Amazon, turn it on and watch some of it. It's really fun. Her face and voice have appeared in commercial campaigns for products including Swedish Fish Candy, Old Bay Seasoning, and Tick Pick. She co-founded Nico Frank Productions, which is a nonprofit company in New York City. It specializes in comedic sketch and provides more opportunities for women in film. She recently published a book, Dear Future Producer, A Guide to Create Your Own Content and Gain Creative Freedom. She's a very busy lady. Now, to set the stage, what I'd love to do now is show you, if you go to Maggie's website, you'll see a lot of different video reels of her comedy sketches, of her TV work, and so forth. But I want to show a video. It's about 2 minutes, and it's a compilation of some of the commercials she's been in. So why don't we go ahead and roll that video?
Can we have some sauce for the tenders, please?
Oh, sauce is extra.
What?
Sauce is extra.
How dare you charge extra for accoutrements?
Accoutre what?
How much for the sauce?
$3.
Oh, you're actually insane.
Insane. Next. I love these singing shows. We could totally win.
Who will win tonight's showdown? Will it be the mega pop group or the slick single solo artist? But wait, a third contestant? And first place goes to...
It's the only party I'll support.
And is shaped like fish, but tastes like fruit.
She has a chronic problem of using the phone to order food.
Each year, millions are affected with telephonicosis that makes others uncomfortable to look at you.
What costume do you think is going to be the most popular this year? Oh,
Oh, trick-or-treaters.
Trick or treat.
Whoa, I'm seeing double.
Swedish Fish, the #1 fish-shaped candy in the world.
Hey, I'm Maggie, and I'm pretty positive that I can crush Ted in an alphabet contest, but I'm gonna do it backwards. You ready for this? ZYXW, VUTSR, QPO, MLKJ, HDAP, EDCBA.
That was so much fun, wasn't it, Ted? 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 I won.
All right. I love that video of her when she is the fast food worker. So let's bring Maggie on and learn a little bit about her. Maggie, can you join us tonight?
Hello. Thank you so much, Julia, for that beautiful introduction.
Well, we are just so fortunate to have you with us today to learn all about what you've done and your career and how you've gotten to the point that you are now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn off my camera. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will start bringing the students on to ask questions, okay?
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm so honored to be here and appreciative, and I'm so excited to talk to anyone who's younger and who's interested in the arts. So thank you so much for having me. As Julia mentioned, I'm Maggie Politi. She gave a nice little overview of what I do. So thank you so much for that. I'm just going to give you a little insight of kind of my journey and how everything came to be. I grew up in a really small town in upstate New York called Lake Placid, New York. And I went to college in DC for musical theater. And then right after college, I moved to New York City, like a week after. I knew what I wanted to do. And so I just took the plunge. And, you know, over the last decade, I've had the privilege of, you know, working in regional theater all over the United States. I got into some voiceover work, which is really exciting, some commercial work, which has been fun. And also, Julia mentioned my work as a producer, which has been some of the most fulfilling work that I've done. And it really all stemmed from just wanting to create things and to writing silly sketches on my own at home. And you know, I started just putting things together, learning how to work a camera, really practicing the skill of writing things out and just, you know, putting myself on camera and wanting to give myself as many opportunities as I could. And, you know, as you all know, social media is not going anywhere. And I could see that it was just, there was a rise in it. It was just getting more and more popular. So I really wanted to try to take advantage of this platform for exposure. And so I just started writing all these silly little things. And you know, I had a writing partner, his name is Spiro, and he's also my producing partner now as well. And we established in 2017 a production company called Nico Frank Productions. And we started off our first year doing silly little sketches. We wrote, you know, I think we got into 17 international film festivals our first year, which was really, really excited, especially when, you know, we were really just doing it for ourselves. But as we started to create, we were more inspired and we wanted to just keep doing more and more and more. And so then after our first year together, we produced a film initiative called Ladies in Action, which was 4 short films, and they were all written by, directed by, and starring women. And we had a Tony Award winner, Victoria Clark, made her directorial debut in it. We had Sarah Priebus, who was one of the hosts of HQ Trivia. I don't know if you ever played that. She starred in one of our films. We produced a full-scale music video. We raised like $50,000 to do the production. And we ended up having this beautiful screening in New York City, private screening for industry folks at the Wythe Hotel in Brooklyn. And that was very exciting for us as well, because we learned so much about being producers. And, you know, that just sort of opened up these opportunities. And pretty soon we were approached by someone to create our own sketch series for our own little show on Amazon Prime called Theater School Dropout. So that led to that. And then over the years, of course, able to do some fun TV shows and work with some incredible comedians, and just stay grateful throughout the entire experience. And Spiro and I just released a book called Dear Future Producer. And like Julia said, it's all about trying to show you how to create your own artistic freedom and how to be creative so you don't need to wait around for someone else to cast you in something. And I think that is a really empowering power to have. You always want to keep your eyes open and your wheelhouse open so that you're not just focusing on one little box, and you can expand all your creative horizons. And that's what we've been doing. And yes, I feel really grateful and lucky to be here. And I'm so excited to answer any questions that you might have.
That's wonderful. And you have explored so many different roles in film and theater and television and then writing as well. I looked at your book on Amazon today, and it's got some really good reviews. I can't wait to take a peek at it. So.
Thank goodness.
So let's go ahead and get to the students. And I want to remind everyone else who's watching us on Facebook and also here on Zoom that we'll come to your questions too. So make sure you get those ready. But our first student up is Sarah, and Sarah is a freshman at Noblesville High School. Hi, Sarah. What question do you have for Maggie today?
Hi, what are your tips to build confidence? Because I'm a very introverted person, but I love to perform.
Yeah, I'm kind of shy inside too sometimes. So I can relate to you on that. I think that in this career, you really do have to sort of put yourself in some uncomfortable situations at first. You have to do things that scare you in the beginning. And I always say that, like, when you do something that scares you, it makes you a better performer, it makes you a better actor. And it just shows you like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. I always say that like improv classes or a class that has no pressure around it is a fun way to just like kind of be silly and play with other people in the room. But also, if you don't have the luxury of being in a class right now because of COVID, I would take advantage of things like TikTok and like these social media platforms where you can make silly videos at home by yourself. You don't even have to post them, but you can create at home and just practice doing it and see where exactly you might fit in and what material you feel the most comfortable in. Another thing that you could do, Sarah, is just start to write. Just start to write all the ideas that you have. Maybe, for instance, like if there's a musical that you want to try out for something and you're kind of feeling scared or shy or something like that, just practice in front of people that you love and that you trust. Because the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll be. And honestly, the more comfortable you are in your own skin and you're not worried about what anyone else thinks is usually when people start flocking to you and asking you to be in stuff. Because that's kind of like the beauty of theater, is that you just kind of have to get out there and just trust your instincts and know that your instincts are usually right, and just love whatever talents you have inside of you. Just build it up and tell yourself kind thoughts as well. Tell yourself, I can do this. There's nothing scary about this. I am talented. I have something special about me, because that's the truth, is that nobody is like you. No matter what anybody else tells you, you are so special and individual.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Great question, Sarah, and perfect answer, Maggie.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So Sarah's going to stay on, and we're going to come back to the students later to see if they have another question. The next up is Tyler, and Tyler is a sophomore at Plymouth High School, which I think is in northern Indiana. So Tyler, what question do you have for Maggie tonight?
Okay, the question that I have is, how did you build connections in the different industries? And then how did you expand that into other industries?
Okay, great question. So for theater, the way that I expanded my industry connections is really just doing as much summer stock theater as I could when I was in college and out of college. So when I was in college, and even when I was in high school, I did a summer acting camp like every single summer. So I spent my entire summer either being in musicals or, being in community theater shows. And then once I got to college, I auditioned for as many productions as I could possibly do. And, I did a summer stock every single summer. And I think that was really, really, really important because a lot of those people that I did summer stock with back then are now like starring in Broadway shows, or they're the costume designers, or they're directing now, or, they're writing and they need new people to be on their shows, things like that. So I always tell people that you want to really be kind and friendly with everybody that you can, because you never know who's going to be able to connect you later on and who's going to be able to create with you later on. There are people that I met in my freshman year of college that I'm still creating with, and that I feel like totally comfortable with asking the day before, hey, can you come over and be in this little sketch with me? Whatever it is. I think that's really, really important. So that was in terms of theater. In terms of voiceover and commercial stuff, it was a whole new ball game when I got to New York. I mean, there's a whole group of voiceover and commercial casting directors that I didn't know. And so what I had to do was I basically, was working constantly as a waitress. I was working Friday night. I did double Saturday, double Sunday for like 7 years, like just constantly in a restaurant. But then during the week, Monday through Thursday, I'd be taking as many classes as I could with different casting directors, and, just learning the business, like, asking other actors questions. That's a really big important one. Like sometimes actors are scared to ask other people their opinions, but that's the beauty of acting in New York or any city, is that you can be like, hey, what did you think of this class? Like, was that casting director interested in new talent? Just asking as many questions as possible, reading books on it. I just really was like a little detective, and that's how y'all are going to be too. You just have to have this thirst for the knowledge, and just try to meet as many people as you can, and just be kind to everyone along the way. Thanks, Tyler. That was a great question.
Okay.
We've done several of these car front seats, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we do them with our live performances. And what you just said, I think, is key, because I hear it over and over from our professionals, is be kind, be nice, be collaborative, because you never know who down the road you might end up working with, or, needing some advice from. So I hear that from everyone. So
it's totally true. And, when you go to a conservatory program specifically, and they have cuts, it's so heartbreaking for students if you get cut, or somebody that got cut. Everybody that got cut from my program is like famous now. So it's just silly. Like, nobody should be cut. You shouldn't, you should just really keep your mind open, because it's the people that you least expect it that turn around to do something that you could never have imagined.
You hear those stories all the time, whether it's with musicians or actors. So you're right. It can get discouraging, but you just keep moving forward.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Our next student up is Isabella. Isabella is a senior at Fishers High School, and I understand she's just been accepted into Ball State's theater directing program. So Isabella, welcome. What's your question for Maggie?
Hi, I know you are in a lot of aspects of performing, but I wanted to know what has been your favorite project you've ever worked on and why?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, congratulations on Ball State University. That's so exciting. I'm so excited for you. The thing is that I love performing. I have wanted to do this since I was like 5 years old. My parents, it's so funny. I tell my husband all the time, like, even when I was 13 and I remember my parents talking about braces, I remember it being such a heated discussion, because they were like, well, maybe she shouldn't get the braces because then she'll have more character, when she goes on to be an actress. Like, this was like a serious conversation when I was 13, because I knew I wanted to do this. So I really love being on set more than anything. Like, it's just so much fun for me. I did this episode of Rachel Dratch's Late Night Snack, and she's a famous famous comedian. She used to be in SNL, and she's been in a lot of movies. And that was a really, really fun experience, just being on set and, you know, learning. Like those beginning experiences were just like, they meant so much to me. And just like taking it in and watching the director and watching, you know, just watching how people reacted. So those like beginning TV experiences really meant so much. But as a producer, I would say that I briefly touched on it. The Ladies in Action project that we produced just meant so much to me because I was, you know, so frustrated seeing, you know, so many men, to be honest, on set. It was like so male dominant. Like, you know, once in a while you'd see a female sound designer, and I really wanted to see something different. And so walking on set, knowing that I had made sure that this was an entirely female run project, it just meant so much to me to look over and know that the gaffer was a female, that the composer was a female, the stars were females, the writers were females. Like it just felt like such an amazingly empowering project. And we all, you know, the collaboration was so beautiful, and the men that were involved were so behind it. So I think that in general, as a producer, that was the project that really touched me the most. Thank you so much. That was a great question.
Thank you.
This may be an unfair question. Do you have a preference between live theater, you know, stage acting, or film or television?
I think that I used to really lean towards theater more. But over the past 4 or 5 years, I'm much more focused on TV. I think that's, if I were to just like, you know, reach for the stars and manifest my ultimate dream, it would be like to be a series regular on a comedic television show. That would just be amazing. So I think right now I am kind of more pulled in that direction, but it started off just pure joy being on stage.
Yeah. Well, your comedic timing, just from what I've watched on your website, and then on Theater School Dropouts, is great. I can see why that's your, you know, what you'd love to do. I want to remind folks who's joining us on Facebook and Zoom to go ahead. If you have questions already, go ahead and get those typed in. If you're on Facebook, put them in the comments. If you're joining us on Zoom, you'll see a little Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. If you put your cursor over that, so type your questions in there, and we'll get to those once we finish with the students.
They're going to be like, what's it like being married to Michael?
Yes, we didn't mention, I don't think, that Maggie's husband is also an actor, and he was in The Lion King on Broadway, right? When the shutdown happened.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So our next student up is Maddie, and Maddie is a freshman at Noblesville High School. We have several Noblesville folks joining us tonight. So I'm going to turn off my camera, and Maddie, and let you ask your question.
Hi.
Hi, Maddie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So my question was, what colleges or performing arts schools do you recommend applying to for someone who aspires to be on Broadway?
So, you know, the game has changed a little bit since I was auditioning for theaters or for colleges. But, you know, a lot of them are now virtual. So I've heard that there's like good and bad for that, because you don't have to travel. I had to travel to every single school to audition. And, you know, some of the top schools are still the top schools. And that would be Carnegie Mellon University, Michigan University, CCM, Elon is a great one. Penn State University, Boston Conservatory is great. FSU, Florida State University, is fantastic. NYU is a good one. But you know, the absolute top, you know, and it's a sad truth, but if you went to Michigan, CCM, or Carnegie Mellon, you're in a good spot. You're in a really good spot to be on Broadway, just because their alumni connections are incredible. You have an amazing showcase in New York. You almost instantly get an agent. You know, Juilliard, of course, is like a fantastic school as well. Penn State University is really up there as well. Those are like, you know, the top ones, but there's also, I wanted to mention my friend Maggie Barra, and she's on Instagram, and her name is Actor Aesthetic. And she runs basically an actor Instagram for kids that want to go to college and major in musical theater. She's got everything you could ever possibly need to know about how to apply, you know, how to build up your rep book, So I think that it's a fantastic resource. And she also writes a blog, so you can check that out as well. Because she's really in the like college audition game, and it's been so long since I've auditioned for college. But I do know that if you went to those schools, you're good. You are good.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
What a wealth of knowledge. And I have to put a plug in. My degree is in theater from Indiana University.
Yeah.
So of course, I have to put a plug in for IU.
Oh yeah, there's like so many good schools that I didn't mention, but
Oh, yeah.
just at the top of my head, the top schools.
Definitely,
Yeah.
those are the top schools, sure, especially for musical theater. I know Cincinnati is wonderful.
Yes.
So, well, we've got some questions coming in from folks. So let's get to our last student, Addison, another freshman from Noblesville. I think Addison just got back from choir practice too.
Oh, cool.
So, Addison, what's your question tonight?
Hi. What classes, performing arts training, and activities did you do in high school that best prepared you for what you're doing now in NYC?
Well, I went to a boarding school, which there's a lot of people have certain feeling about boarding school, but for me, it really changed my life. I mentioned in my intro, I went to I'm from a very small town, and there wasn't many music opportunities there. And so, apart from just doing community theater there, I knew I wanted more. And so I did lots of theater camps growing up. There's a fantastic theater camp that I did called Walnut Hill in Natick, Massachusetts. And they have another great, they have a performing arts high school that basically funnels you into these big musical theater programs. But there's lots of programs like that over the summer that are available. I would take advantage of any of that if you can. But then in college, I took a lot of improv classes, which ended up being really essential for what I do. If you want to do commercials, you have to feel good about improv and being able to just kind of come up with funny stuff on the spot. So those were really important. And when I got to New York City, I studied at UCB, which is a pretty famous comedy school that you could take classes in. They have it in LA as well. And, so just kind of always doing that training. And, in college, I did a musical theater conservatory. So I had a lot of theater classes and speech and voice. And I studied in London at the London Dramatic Academy for 5 months. And that was really important, learning about Shakespeare. My advice to you, Addison, would just be, if you're not exactly sure where you want to put your most of your energy, I would take as many classes as you can, just learn as much as you possibly can. Comedy and improv is always my top recommendation, just because it's so fun and there's not that much pressure on it. But, getting into musicals at school, just taking as many classes as you can on the side. Honestly, just doing things like this where you can learn from someone who's doing it professionally is so smart. And I was someone who took all the notes. I did as many of these things too as I could. I took notes on everybody. I saved email addresses, and I emailed those same people for years, just staying in touch with them and stuff. So I would recommend just dipping your toes into as many classes and opportunities as you can on the side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
Great advice. So we have a question I want to get to real quick here that came in through Zoom.
Okay.
Peg wants to know, she says she wondered what life has been like for you and Michael to keep each other positive during COVID. And again, Michael's your husband, who's also an actor.
Yeah. I'm so lucky to have my husband. A lot of people, especially living in a house with two actors, it can be kind of hard. But I'm really lucky because we really are each other's cheerleaders. And I also married someone who very rarely has a bad day. He's just, no matter what, he's always happy. And I tell people all the time, my husband was as happy catering as he is on Broadway. He's just a happy person. And so I'm really lucky to wake up and just be with someone who's joyful. And I think that really does help me as well. And it actually is an important lesson on just life in general. When life is hard no matter what. COVID has definitely made it particularly more challenging for a lot of people. but if you surround yourself by people that really bring out the best in you, I think that's the best advice, that life advice that I could give to anybody. I really started in my late 20s to start to like analyze my friendships and like see, who is like bringing me down, who, like, what energy is going to be the best to provide sort of like this successful and like happy environment. So I think that's really important. We're also, we're both voiceover actors. And so that's been incredibly, incredibly wonderful during this time because, theater's obviously not open. TV auditions are starting to really pick up, and commercial auditions are happening virtually. Michael's actually shot a couple commercials during this time, and the voiceover work has not stopped. So we're both really, really grateful that, we had that skill and we were able to take it into this weird time, and where we're still able to be creative doing that. But the short answer is we're doing well. We feel grateful, and we're just hanging in there, and we're just trying to stay positive.
Right. Oh boy, I bet commercial auditions and all that has totally changed.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, even like, in the past couple of weeks, the TV auditions have really started to pick up for TV shows and stuff. And it's so weird, like just really auditioning just like this, and you see the casting director, you're like, oh, it's just virtual. And then your callbacks are virtual. And it's so interesting. It's just very, you don't even have to wear pants. Like you could wear sweatpants, like you're just wearing like a top on the, it's like, you don't have to, it's not like going into the office where you need to make sure everything looks perfect. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's go around to the students one more time. I'm not sure that all of them will have another question for you, but I do want to give them the opportunity if they do. And I see we do have a couple more questions being typed in. So let's see, let's go back to Sarah and see. Sarah, do you have another question? If not, it's okay.
Yes, I do. What are your biggest tips for making it professionally on Broadway in live theater?
Okay, well, then I would say you should move to New York if you really want to be on Broadway, because all the casting directors for Broadway are here. My big advice would be to move here with either an EMC card or your union card, your Actors Equity card. So if you can work at a theater before you move here that offers you your EMC card or your equity card, that's great, because once you get to New York City, it is really hard to audition unless you're in the union, especially when it comes to open calls. If you have an agent, that's different because they're getting you the auditions for you. But if you're coming to New York without an agent, it's really important to have that card. Now, to preface that, I would say that you shouldn't move to New York City until you're really ready, right? Because you want to make sure you have like a resume. So what I would do is I would just like reach out to every theater near you and see how many, audition for everything as soon as theater comes back. And really try to build up that resume and build up your experience. And, you could go to like some of those combined auditions. I can't remember the ones that are near you guys. Like, do you have UPDAs near y'all?
I'm not sure.
Well, there's like, the combined auditions where you go and there's tons of regional theaters there and you sing a minute and a half or something. And then you get lots of, you get your callbacks and you go and you meet with people, opportunities like that where you can actually travel and work at several different theaters before you come here. Just because you really are, it's like competing in the Olympics. You're competing against the best actors and singers in the world. And so you want to get here and feel like, okay, I'm ready to hit the ground running. So yeah, I mean, and then if your theater program offers you a showcase where you are able to get an agency, awesome. And if not, just start doing your research on agencies. You can send out cold submissions. You can, build up your reel. You can do as many things. You can take videos of yourself singing and make a website. There's lots of things you can do to try to prepare yourself for getting here. But the biggest thing you have to do is have faith.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. And we do have equity theaters here in Central Indiana. We have Indiana Repertory Theater.
Right.
Actors Theater in Indiana is one of our resident companies. I can't remember if the Phoenix Theater is or not, but we do have equity theaters here right in the area. So yeah.
Totally.
Tyler, do you have another question? If not, it's okay.
Okay, I do have another question. So this is like a question about producing.
Okay.
So how do you write in a character that's dynamic and changes over time?
How do you write in a character that's dynamic but changes over time? Well, I mean, for me, when I'm thinking about different characters that I want to write about, it's like people that I kind of know in real life and then exaggerated, right? So like I'll take my mom, for example. I love my mom, but she's like a character, and she always, she talks like this and everything she says is just so sweet and ridiculous, and you take that idea and you exaggerate it, right? So like it becomes more of like this dynamic, like, strong character. And then over time, just like people change, characters change. So, it's just a matter of like coming up with an idea of characters and then kind of coming up with like a timeline of how they might interact with each other, how a situation might change one of the others. Like you think about when you're in high school and you have certain friends, and some of those friends, they go to, let's say they go to a show together, a concert, and then they come back and they're like filled with life. It's like everything that happens to you in life changes you a little bit. And so you just use real life situations to affect those characters. And I think the fun thing about writing and producing is watching the characters change. So you might have an idea for a character, and then by the end of what you've written, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think that this character would end up like that. But you just keep your mind open and kind of just play around and throw out a million ideas, and whichever one sticks. You just have to be open to just different creative ideas. And another good tip, Tyler, if you are interested in writing and putting your own work out there, is if you say you have a little story that you've been working on and some characters that you love, read it to some people, show it to some people, and get some feedback. And sometimes that feedback, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I'm totally going to take that and change it. So, it's another just tip to get new ideas, because ideas are always changing and they're always growing. I hope that answered the question.
It did a little bit.
A little?
A little bit.
Well, it answered my question. I watch TV series all the time, and I think, did they know, these series that are 6 seasons, and you wonder about that character development over that long time. Did they start out knowing in season 1 that this character in season 6 is going to take this arc?
I don't know about that so much. I feel like it's really more season to season, because they have writers' rooms where they like come up with, they definitely know the full arc of this first of the season,
right?
And then they have breaks where they, they start to think about, oh, how can we change these characters and make them even more dynamic? And so I think those decisions are made in pre-production before the next season starts. But it is so interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's great. That's a great question, Tyler. Thanks. Okay, next up, I'm going to ask Isabella. She has another question for you.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I was wondering if you've ever had to deal with sexism in the workplace, specifically like in the performing arts workplace, and how you overcame it.
Yeah, as women, like it feels inevitable. I mean, the answer is yes, just in terms of like, a lot of people underestimate women, especially in power positions. I think it was difficult at first to be in charge, to be an executive producer on projects, and people just like question a lot of my decisions, and like, oh, well, or like they didn't necessarily like when I had to talk sternly to them because they were late, things like that, where it's like, the job wasn't being done. And so then I had to talk to them a certain way. And then kind of that double standard of like, oh, well, why is she talking to me like that? Where like a man, if he talked, it would just be that he was being a good boss, And of course, there's a kind way to say everything and a professional way to say everything. And I feel like I always did that, but it was sort of an interesting dynamic to be the person that had to make the really hard decisions, and sometimes the reactions to them. And it's not always fun to be the person in charge, because sometimes you have to fire people, and sometimes you have to, you get projects back that are 3 weeks late, and that's just unacceptable, so you have to sort of have hard conversations. So yeah, I felt it in that way. And I think earlier on in my career when I was, I did like a national tour of Seussical, and I remember just like there were times I felt really uncomfortable, but I was too uncomfortable to even say that I was uncomfortable, too afraid that I would lose my job, or, that I just needed the money so bad, situations like that. And I think that like that's sort of the importance of the union. When you are feeling uncomfortable, there's always a union representative that you can talk to about that is supposed to be listening with an open ear and an open heart. And I would just, Isabella, I would just encourage you that if you ever are feeling uncomfortable, to talk to somebody about it, especially if it's, if it's on set or anything, always talk to the producers about that. That's the producer's job, is to listen to you and hear any concerns. And I think that in the last couple of years, there has been some nice change in terms of like, women speaking out and, feeling comfortable in their positions. And so I think that, we're on a good path towards getting there, but, women still don't make the same amount as men. And so we sort of have to support one another. I think that women supporting women is very, very important, and we need to really embrace that idea. And I hope you never feel any sexism, but you probably will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great question, Isabella, one we've never had before. Great question. And thank you, Maggie, for such a thoughtful response.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got about 5 minutes or so left. Let's see if Maddie has another question.
Hi, I do. What are the biggest things the biggest couple of things that casting directors are looking for at Broadway auditions?
Well, I think comfortableness in your skin, walking in and looking comfortable and not, looking nervous. Because if you're nervous, then, if you're not sure of yourself, then why are they going to be sure? Broadway casting directors, they want to cast their shows. I mean, they're sitting there hoping that you come in and you're amazing. So they really are rooting for you across the table. And I think it's just important to like be a human being, to walk in and like genuinely say like, how are you? Not walking to an X and saying your name and singing the song and leaving like a robot, really sort of being a human being, commenting on, just picking up on the room and hearing the vibes. And then of course, talent. I mean, they want to hear, that you are really good, that there's something individual about you that, and it's not even necessarily that like you sing the loudest or anything, but that you're like standing there and comfortable with who you are. And there's something special about you. I think the most beautiful thing in the world that you can do is be exactly who you are.
Thank you so much. That was just really cool to hear.
Of course, of course.
Well, thank you, Maddie. And then last up, we have Addison. Addison, do you have another question tonight for Maggie?
Yes, thank you. My other question was that how do I find like a good agent, for example, like that isn't like a scam or anything? Like, how do I source out those people?
Well, good question. Just so you know, and you never pay an agent anything to sign you. So that's like the first thing to look out for. If you're seeing something like at the mall or like in the newspaper and it's like, oh, we'll represent you, just pay $600 for these photos, then that's immediately a scam. An agent doesn't get paid anything until you are paid. So they don't get paid any type of yearly fee or anything like that. If you went in and you booked a show, then you would give them 10% of your salary, and that's just how it works. 10% is standard. Manager is 15%. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I guess it would depend on like really what you wanted to do. If you wanted to do commercials and TV. I'm not necessarily sure of the market in Indiana. I don't know any agents out there. I'm sure there are agents in that area. Google is your friend. You can look it up. If you know anyone else that has an agent, it's always good to get referrals. Like referrals are the absolute best way to sign with an agency, is maybe having a director you've worked with in the past. They know someone at this agency and they're like, oh yeah, they can vouch for you and be like, Addison is fantastic. Having good professional headshots. I wouldn't approach an agency until you're really ready and you have a whole packet of materials. You have your professional resume, you have, and the good thing is that Google, you can look at a million actors' websites and sort of model your own website on that. But you definitely want to have like a promotional place where people can find you and see your work and things like that. And now with social media and how easy it is to just upload a video of yourself, even if you don't have, footage of yourself like starring in a TV show or footage from a musical that you were in, you can always record yourself doing a monologue or, singing in front of your camera or whatever, just putting yourself out there a little bit. And then, if you're in a big market, like a big city like Atlanta or LA or, New York City or Chicago, there's tons of agencies and, there's lists of them that you can find online, and a lot of them accept headshot and resumes just mailed to their office. Sometimes you don't hear, sometimes you do. It's like one of those things like, maybe you'll hear, maybe you won't. Some of them have audition nights that you can go to and, prepare some material in front of the agencies. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work to get ready and to be ready to do that. And also, my dad said something to me once, like when I was way younger, and I always thought about this. He was like, make people believe that you're famous, show people that, make yourself up every day so that people are like, oh, wow, look at her, and it's not in a way of looking a certain way or getting attention or anything. But there was a time in my life where I really wanted to be an actor, but I wasn't really necessarily focused on doing my makeup or looking necessarily presentable. So I think unfortunately, that's kind of, it's a real part of it. Getting your, working out, having a healthy body, having a healthy mind, learning how to blow dry your hair really well, learning how to do your makeup and watching makeup tutorials and figuring out the right outfit for your type, that type of thing is unfortunately pretty important. But sometimes, your type is just total natural beauty. So you don't have to worry so much about it. But for me, I know I'm going to be going in for the blonde, ditzy role. So I need to have clothes that match that for those auditions. You know what I mean? I hope that helped, Addison.
Well, I think that was great advice, especially
yes, thank you so much.
Oh, I'm sorry, Addison, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Oh, especially the part about, an agency, a reputable agency doesn't take that money up front.
Never.
Yeah, and that's really important to know. But there are agencies in Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Chicago,
right,
that you can look into. And part of it is just asking people around here, maybe some adults that are in the theater in this area, and find out who their agents are. But there is commercial work and around this area. So, all right, well, we've got a couple more questions. I think we have time for one more. Let me just see. Peg wants to know, how would one go about getting into voiceover work?
Yeah, so voiceover, it's an interesting industry. A lot of people say it's one of the hardest industries to break into. I think it depends on the region that you're in. There is, there's lots of voiceover coaches. I personally teach private voiceover coaching. I did it myself too when I was younger and I didn't know much about voiceover. I did a lot of private coaching and just learning how exactly to do it and what equipment you need and what your at-home studio needs to look like, and just practicing all different types of scripts because, just like TV, there's all different types of genres. So it's the same as you're auditioning for SVU is much different than if you're auditioning for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. There's all different types of genres. There's animation, there's ADR, there's promo work, commercial radio, ADR, dubbing, looping. So you really need to like know the different genres and learn how to rehearse those scripts and practice them. And then of course have a studio at home that you can record at and be able to send in your auditions. There's a couple websites that people use when they don't have agents, and they're called voices123.com, or no, voice123.com, and then voices.com. And then there's others also that are actually being developed now, but it's a site basically where you can submit your own auditions. And like basically a lot of advertising and marketing companies put up scripts that they need voices for, and you can submit yourself to that. So that's one way to sort of break in on your own. But I would definitely recommend coaching, a lot of coaching and learning. Just like any other skill, you need to like learn how to do it before you just throw yourself out there.
So is much of the work done at home, or do mostly
all
just
of it?
All of it, even so, not just the audition, a lot of the work you do at home instead of going into a studio somewhere.
Yeah, well, pre-COVID, we used to do auditions in person where we'd go to the studios. There's like 15 studios in New York. It'd be like, you'd be at one of the 15 that day. You'd be like, okay, you're going here, and then you're going there, and then you're going here. And so you would go in and meet with the casting director and like do the audition in their professional booth. And then there's also agencies in New York that have their own booths at the agencies. My agency has a huge, beautiful booth that you can go in. So even when the audition wasn't in person, we would still go to the agent's office and record it in their booth because it would sound the best. But now because of COVID, there's been more of a, a need for voiceover artists on their own to have their at-home studio where they can submit their auditions from home. And then if you book the audition, you do it at home as well.
Wow. That's really fascinating. I had no idea agents had booths for you to do your auditions in for voiceover. That's great.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you. Before we go away, I want to mention to folks some other opportunities that are coming up. Our next car front seat, which is March 29th, is with Adam Olendorf. And now this one, we're going to take a little bit of a different, instead of acting, he is a country music artist. He has written for songs for Casey Musgraves and all kinds of different country music performers. He himself has performed with Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, and on the Country CMA Awards. And he's just the nicest guy. So if you're interested in country music or how to write music, please join us for that one. Then we have another very special opportunity coming up, Classics in Context in March. We are going to be doing the Maestros and the Mouse with Randy Thornton. Randy is a Grammy Award-winning executive music producer for Disney Music in LA. He's worked for Disney for 30 years, and he also happens to be their official music historian. So he's going to be talking all about how Disney has utilized classical music in movies and cartoons, and he's going to be sharing some rare audio with us too, so that's exciting. And then we have a couple luminaries presentations coming up. That's our speakers group. We have one tomorrow, Arlen Bayless, who is the wonderful artist who's done lots of sculptures all over the world, but specifically in Carmel. And you can still register for that. That's tomorrow at 2 Eastern. And then on March 23rd, we have a very fun one with music historian Randy Albright. He'll be talking about Indiana's amazing role in American pop music. So that will be a fun one as well. But Maggie, I am just so honored that you joined us tonight. Your information was just so enlightening for not only for me, but for the students. And I want to invite all the students to turn their cameras back on and their mics. And I want to thank Car Global, our sponsor for this program. And I want to thank Maggie again. So students, let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's been so fun. And I hope that you feel encouraged and inspired and just chase after those dreams.
Great. And great questions, students, and great answers, Maggie. And for all of you who joined us tonight, thank you. We hope to see you back at the center very soon, but otherwise join us again for another one of our online programs. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Good night.